coming up next on The Health Hustle.
When you decided to go all in, were you afraid of failing?
Oh yeah, it was so cringe, like every day. Oh, that's like the worst part when I think back on those days, because I had to start this Instagram like as I was still fencing, and all my competitors would see it, and it was so like, it was like sharing vulnerable stuff, and you can't be vulnerable around your competitors. Like we're studying each other. Like we might have to fight like on the podium for a podium place. Like you don't want them to know the stuff that you're really feeling, but to connect with my audience, I really needed to share things I was struggling with, like insecurities with my weight and stuff that I was embarrassed about. So it was so cringe. I'd post stuff, and then like at practice, people would talk about it, or they said nice things to my face, but I don't know what they said, but like who knows? Like locker room talk is kind of savage. So it was a really hard time until it started getting traction. And then, of course things kind of changed after that.
Locker room talk is savage.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to think. I literally can't even begin to guess what is said in the fencing locker room. I don't even know.
That's niche. That's a niche topic right there.
That is some viral content. Yeah. If you can pull some of that out of there, that sounds phenomenal.
What up, y'all? Corey here. On this episode, I had a chance to sit down with April Victoria Whitney. April is the founder of Petite Power, which is the first and only digital health club for petite women. April is also an ex-professional fencer, certified nutritionist, and personal trainer. Some of the things that we get into on this episode, though, are why she was inspired by Peter Pan in her early days, her experience with Olympic fencing, which was fascinating, especially with the story with her coach, the value in fresh curiosities, learning to break the rules, dealing with a panic attack and burnout in the corporate world, becoming a writer, finding your own voice, why you should break the rules, having fear of success, which is, I think, unique for a lot of people, listening to your customers, building a niche business, which she did a phenomenal job of, the difference between running a business and being an artist, especially when it comes to content creation, clarifying your vision, and so much more. One last thing, if you're a health or fitness professional and you're having difficulties getting leads, one of the most common reasons that I see this is not having a well-defined niche. If you go to the link in the description, I have a free 3-step process that walks you through exactly how to get clarity on which niche is best suited for you and your business. Without further ado, let's go. April, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm wonderful. You have one of the best examples of what we can call a niche business that I think I've ever seen. And I think a lot of people can agree with that statement, being a petite athlete as you are. But where I want to start with you before we get too deep into that piece of it is that you used to want to be like Peter Pan.
Yeah. Not in the bad way, though. Not like a Wendy or a Peter Pan. More like a Captain Hook.
Yeah. Can you tell us why and where that comes from?
Oh, no one's ever asked me that. I don't know why it appealed to me, but when I was a kid, I saw Peter Pan for the first time, and something about the sword fighting in that scene where Captain Hook's like on the ship and he's like wielding his saber or whatever, I was just like, that's really badass. Like, I want to do that.
Was this like the cartoon or like the real life version?
No, it was the cartoon, like the OG Disney movie, like the original.
Because I was obsessed with the movie Hook, if you're familiar.
Oh, that's also really good.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
No, this was
You're
before
talking
that.
like cartoon Peter Pan. Mm-hmm. That was cool.
Yeah,
Sweet.
It was pretty sick.
Yeah. So where did that lead you, wanting to be like Peter Pan?
I asked my mom if I could do that. I didn't know it was called fencing. I didn't know it was a sport. I just said, is that something I could try?
How old were you at this time?
I was 8 or 9.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had just quit gymnastics. I did it for 6 years. I did it competitively. And I tried every sport in between those two. Like I tried soccer, I tried a bunch of things, and I just didn't like any of them. I just couldn't, it didn't catch. So my mom was, I think, down to try some weird things because I wasn't liking anything that other kids liked. And it kind of, the rest is history, I guess.
So you grew up in Connecticut, correct?
Yeah.
Was it just you and your mom?
Me, my mom, dad, my sister.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And were you the only one that was into this weird stuff, or was your sister as well?
No, she was an artist. She's a really talented artist. So She went the artsy route and I went the athletic route.
Got it. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. What was your first experience in fencing like? Did you just like the idea of wielding a sword or what?
Actually, I can remember it as if it was one of the most important days of my life, because the minute that the weapon was put in my hand and I took like the on guard stance, it felt like it felt like I had done it forever. Like my coach was like, she's a natural. Like, it just fit in a really weird way. To this day, like when I was 9, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, this is just really easy for me. But now that I'm, 31, I'm like, oh, like nothing else in life like has come that easy. It just, it felt like I was supposed to be doing it, or like I had done it before. And it was like it was meant to be happening. I don't know how to describe it.
No, I get it. You felt at home.
Yeah, at home.
So that's kind of a unique thing, right? Like I can't even begin to guess where I would find fencing.
I know.
Like, is that a Connecticut thing? Like,
it's not. It's actually a New York thing, pretty much.
Well, that's not that far, luckily.
Yeah, thankfully. We went to a club in Danbury, Connecticut, which is, kind of the middle of nowhere-ish. And then at my first national event, a coach from New York City recruited me, kind of approached my family and was like, would she come to New York? Could you bring her? And we eventually moved. I didn't move to New York, but I started commuting with my mom to New York, 90 minutes several times a week. And then I went to boarding school in New York just so that I could train at night in the city. So I would take the train myself.
So that was like your whole world at the time.
It was everything. I missed prom. I didn't technically graduate from high school. Like I did. Like I did graduate and I went to college, but I didn't go to school the number of days, that you're supposed to.
Just because you were training for fencing.
Yeah, and traveling, like competitions all over the world, training, mostly like the travel days though.
Did you ever get burnt out?
100 million times. Every day.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. It was not, I would say like I did it for 18 years. I think cumulatively, maybe like 3 or 4 of those years were like fun.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. What kept you going?
I have always had like this weird quality to me that I can like endure things for long periods of time if I have a vision. So just having this vision of like being the best I could be, potentially going to the Olympics, I was willing to I'm like, I can see it. And even if it's 10 years away, it feels close. And it just keeps me going. It's the same thing that keeps me in my business now, I think. It's like a long-term game vision.
Yeah, it's a good skill for a business owner. Do you know the Yellow Runner?
No.
She's become like one of the most well-known endurance athletes. I just recently watched her most recent YouTube video, and she ran, I want to say was it 260 miles or something like that? And it was a phenomenal documentary, right? And you can only imagine, she's literally running for, what is that, like 3-4 days nonstop total to get from start to finish. And that was a phrase that kept coming up, which makes me think a lot about business owners, athletes, whatever, is just the ability to be really good at suffering is like kind of important.
Yeah.
And not even like in a that's fucked up or sad or morbid or why would you do that sense, but in a way of like you care about something so much that you're willing to endure.
Totally.
And I think that's super cool.
Yeah. It's a good way of describing it.
Yeah. So you didn't love it all the time. What was like training for something like this? Like, was it even dialed down to nutrition, how you slept, like who you hung out with? Like how dialed in was this?
Yeah, it was very disciplined on, I'd just say the amount of time I needed to spend with my coach and my teammates. I'd say just so many hours of repetition. It's just so much repetition when you're young because they're trying to really instill certain patterns. I would say though, yeah, I worked with a sports psychologist starting at age 13. So like the mindset stuff came in and we would do mental training. Like he would like clash a pan unexpectedly and then I'd be hooked up to all the biometric things and I'd have to like get my heart rate down to like baseline in under a minute. Like training like where, connecting your mind to your body. Nutrition I didn't learn until I was in college probably. That wasn't really a part of it. It should have been. But yeah, I'd say like the mindset and the just number of hours, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like just, reps.
You went to Cornell, right?
Yeah.
Was your actual education at Cornell relevant or was it purely just defense?
It was relevant because I actually didn't think I was going to make an Olympic run when I graduated college. I thought I was going to retire because I had a lot of interests other than fencing my whole life, whereas my competitors, my teammates, like only liked fencing. And I started to feel that difference of like other interests and things pulling me. And I know with the Olympics, you can't be distracted by anything. You can't have a business on the side unless you're much later down the line. It's like your one love. You just pursue it. And so in college, I had developed other interests. I really liked what I was studying, and I thought, oh, okay, I'll do the NCAAs. I'll fence Div 1. I was on the team for 4 years starting, and then I'll just retire after. And I did for like 6 months after college.
I saw you got a degree in Spanish.
Yeah, I have, so random. I studied science and technology studies, and then I have a double minor in communications and Spanish.
Why Spanish?
I just wanted to like learn another language, and I lived in Spain for a semester. Did in Sevilla, lived with a Spanish family, and I studied philosophy, which will make you fluent. If you want to learn language, just go to a foreign country and enroll yourself in a philosophy class, and you will learn it. It will be very painful, but
I've said that all the time. Every time I think about wanting to learn another language, which I think most people kind of have that on their bucket list, I'm very aware of the fact that the best way to learn a language is to go to the country and do the fucking language.
Full immersion.
Yeah.
100%.
It's probably, now that I'm thinking out loud, that's probably actually true for most things in life.
Probably, yeah.
Right? You want to be good at this thing, go do it. Be in it, live in it, breathe it.
I feel like that's Tony Robbins' entire thing, right? He's it's full immersion events, because it's the only thing that can change you that quick. It's just...
Well, because you need the emotion.
Yeah.
Right? Because even if you want to get real technical, I'm sure the emotion behind being in a country where you can't speak the language is pain.
Oh my God, yeah.
And embarrassment.
Totally.
And that emotion probably motivates you a lot to figure it out.
Yeah, it's so limiting when you don't have your self-expression. You can't make a joke in another language. You're like, shit, I'm so lame.
Yes.
You're so motivated to...
Something I've thought about a lot, honestly, I'd be curious as to your thoughts on this, is that I think one of the advantages of learning another language as somebody that you've learned Spanish is that I would guess, I don't know, but you probably opens up your ability to express yourself in ways that you hadn't been able to otherwise because you didn't have words to describe what you were thinking or feeling.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And also it's there's not direct translations even in between Spanish and English for things. So I feel it gets you creatively thinking, new ways you can express yourself in your first language, because it's they have a different way of conceptualizing it in that language. Or yeah, I think it definitely uses that part of your brain.
What was maybe the worst or the best year of fencing for you, and why?
Oh my God. That's there's so many.
Yeah, you did it for how many years?
18.
Damn. That's a lifetime.
It is a young lifetime, a medieval lifetime.
You lived in the Renaissance day.
Yes.
You made it to 18 and then you lost your head.
Exactly. The worst year was probably, actually the worst was probably after I retired, which is, I lost my coach. He died in a motorcycle accident. And the story of this is incredible. He was born, and his sole drive in life was to put American fencers on the map and make America great at, it's not a Trump phrase, but make them great at fencing, which we weren't. It was Italy and the Soviets and Russia, Cuba. They were really good. And his one thing was I want an American to win an Olympic gold medal. And he brought Lee Kiefer to Tokyo. She became the first man or woman to win gold in the sport of fencing for the U.S. And the day after he got back from that event, he died in a motorcycle accident. So it was almost symbolic, his death, but also he was like a father figure to me. And he was also a very controversial figure, very tough person on everyone that if you worked with him. It gave me most of the qualities I have today. A lot of them came from him. So losing him, and I think it was 2020, it was a couple of years after I retired, I kind of got back with the fencing community. We had kind of regathered and shared stories and previously you would never talk to your competitors about the things that we talked about when he passed. So it was a very unearthing event.
What is maybe the biggest lesson you learned from him?
Probably how to endure extreme amounts of physical and psychological pain.
Through the training that you guys did together?
Yeah. He was brutal. There was, the types of ways they train young athletes today is completely different than when we were growing up. You can't do the things that they did back then. It's just not, there's more barriers and parents don't allow it and organizations don't allow it. But there is just so much, like we were like 13 training till we threw up, and he said crazy things to us at that age, and would hit us, and just, it was insane. It was really insane.
Where was he from?
He's from Rochester, I believe, or Ithaca, somewhere up in,
Originally?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He's from the States.
Yeah, he is.
Oh,
American,
okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because the way you described him, it almost sounded like he was like European.
I know.
Like
You would think.
that's the image I got when you were describing it. I was like, oh man, this sounds like some sort of European hardcore coach that, you know, went over above and beyond essentially.
It was just what was necessary to get us on the level of the European talent, really.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I'm reading a book right now as I run. I love to listen to audiobooks, and it's about David and Goliath. And it was written by Malcolm Gladwell. Have you ever read any of his books?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was one of his books. And in this book, first of all, David and Goliath, the story of David and Goliath is actually completely inaccurate. It's actually super fascinating. We could get in that if you want to, but we don't have to. It's a rabbit hole. But where I'm going with this is that one of the stories he tells in this book is about a team in California. I believe it was in like Silicon Valley area. And it was a daughter. She was 12 years old, and she wanted to start playing basketball. And her father, immigrant father, knew like nothing about basketball. And he was like, okay, I guess I'll figure out this basketball thing because my daughter wants to play it. And he was going to coach the team for his daughter's basketball team. And he goes to a basketball game to watch, to learn the sport. And he notices that basically they're sort of just like letting him walk across half of the court before they actually started defending them. And he's like, why would you like just give up half the court before you actually started playing defense in basketball? And to him, he was like, that just seems stupid. Mm-hmm. Why would anybody do that? As somebody who's never seen the game before. And so he basically started like full press defense, and then ended up taking his daughter's team to winning like the championship match that year, because he basically just looked at it from a different lens and was like, this is dumb. Like, why do we do it this way? Why don't we do it differently?
It takes that fresh curiosity mm-hmm. is what brings innovation to everything. I feel like just someone who's just become so fascinated and obsessed with something they know nothing about, and then they bring in this like whole new perspective, and everyone else is too close, like mm-hmm. they're too locked in the ways that you're supposed to do things, which was actually what I think kept me from making the Olympics eventually. I was very locked in to a way of doing things that got me to an amazing place. It got me really far, but at like the top 0.0001%, you have to be something completely unpredictable. You can't be just the best at these things. Everyone is the best at them. Everyone can do all the same moves as you just as well. They're just as fast. They're just, everything's good, like that good, that you need that like level of ingenuity to be the number one, basically.
Okay, that literally gave me chills, because like the principle of this whole book, David and Goliath, is like the core message behind it is that the things that we think are our strengths or our weaknesses are often actually inaccurate. We have false assumptions about what is good or bad in like every area of our life. And so I think there's a lot of truth to that statement of how you go into it with this like very specific, rigid skill set of what your strengths and weaknesses are, and not realizing that there could be something else that you could offer to this situation that's actually way more useful.
Totally. And I think it's often, this is the part that gives me chills, is like, no one can teach you that. It has to come from you. Mm-hmm. It's a whole completely original creation.
Totally.
So it then becomes this self-development journey. It's like, okay, now you have to go way inward and figure out how you're going to bring that out and like share it with the world.
Totally.
Without shame, in front of everyone, every day. And not everybody is going to get to that point.
Totally. And more often than not, when you do bring that to the forefront, is like people are going to say it's dumb.
Exactly.
Like, that's stupid. Why would you do that? No one's ever done it like that. Like, this is useless. Like,
think about all the best athletes. They have a move that everyone was like really annoyed by in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like so many basketball players just like, that's fucking annoying. Can they stop doing that? And it's like, well, no one else does it because only they can do it like that. And they were brave enough to like pull it out. Maybe it's not like the most traditional thing, or maybe it's not technically breaking a rule, but it's like kind of cheating, and then it just changes the whole game. Mm-hmm. Like everyone then develops that move.
That's exactly what happened with this basketball team I was telling you about, is that the other coaches would get so mad. He was telling stories about they would literally throw chairs onto the court because they were pissed off, and they're cheating, mm-hmm. they're fouling, and it's like, no, they're literally playing the game in a way that you've just never seen it before, and you don't know how to deal with it, essentially.
Yeah, and it's like I was a rule follower for a long time, and that got me to a really high level of sport. Like I could really follow the rules well, do everything really technically well. But there comes a point in time where you have to break all the rules that you learned over your whole life.
Have you seen that show up in other areas of your life other than fencing?
Oh, totally. Yeah, like everywhere.
Really?
Yeah, my sports psych when I was like 15 was like, this is gonna be everywhere, like all over your life, so you should just solve it now. But he was like, the next time you're gonna feel it was I started a business, and I think in the last 3 years, because it only comes out, like my psych used to say, like on the stage. Like for fencing, it was on the strip when like pressure is the highest, everyone's watching you, it's tied score. How you behave, like how you crumble, it's only in those pressure moments, and there's not a lot of moments like that in the rest of your life that are kind of like sport. So he's like, you have to get more attuned to it. It's going to be a quieter thing when it shows up, but it will show up again. Like it's a pattern that like a ceiling or like like an upper limit kind of.
What does it look like for you? How do you tap into that? Or like how do you come to realizations in that? Because you hear a lot of, again, it's man, I don't know. I'd love to talk about the parallels of that, I guess. Of like, I think you hear it a lot in sports, right? Of the athletes that can, under pressure, like Tiger Woods, he was phenomenal under pressure, right? At like highest level of like, that's when you saw the best of Tiger Woods in his prime, obviously. And it's like, you see that in the athletic endeavor a lot, but what about like other realms? I don't know. Do you feel like you can see that in other areas of life?
Yeah, I think it is more, it's less physically evident, and I think it's more internal. Like I think it manifests as a resistance, or like an internal resistance, or just holding back from dreaming big, or you start to play in smaller circles over time, and I think it's like more sinister. It's like harder to spot.
Yeah,
I think it still shows up.
I like the word resistance that you used. Have you ever read Stephen Pressfield's book,
No.
The War of Art?
Mm-mm.
He basically just talks about that exact concept of the resistance and that we all feel it. He gives the example because he's an author, but really anyone in a creative endeavor, whether you like created a YouTube video like you have or started a business, or any time you feel what he calls the resistance, it's basically just like that voice in your head that's essentially telling you like what makes you special, you're not good enough, like why is this unique, nobody cares, stop talking. And he says like when you notice that resistance, the funny thing about it is that like we all experience it. And he gives the analogy of it's basically like a dragon blowing fire in your face every single day. And every single day you have to somehow slay this dragon of resistance, of like fighting it off, because everybody experiences it. And the only way through is like you just have to keep slaying the dragon, essentially.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit. So you were fencing at the highest level. When did the transition happen of like, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm ready for like the next chapter of my life? Where did that happen?
It happened in 2017. I was working in a pharmaceutical advertising agency in Manhattan, New York, and I had a panic attack one day. Like it was the first one I ever had, and it was an out-of-body experience for me. I just hated my job. There's really no other way to say it. Like, I had been in corporate for maybe like 4 years at that point, and I thought I wanted to be like a corporate girly. I was like, I'll climb the ladder. I will, do whatever I need to be. I wanted to be CEO or president or whatever when I was like 19, and I could I don't want to do that now, but
I think a lot of people come to that realization. Luckily you came to it soon enough that it didn't matter. But.
Yeah, very soon. And I was also training full time in fencing. I think that was the part of the panic attack, the burnout, was I was at work 9 to 9, more like Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends I was going to like Slovakia or like France or wherever there was a World Cup to compete, and it was like Friday to Sunday in Europe and then back. And then I was training in the mornings and at night. So I was training in McCarran Park with my coach at like 5 a.m. We'd do a lesson, and then after work I'd go to practice from like whenever I could until whenever I could, like 10, 11, train with the Columbia team, train at the Fencers Club in Manhattan, whatever. Just whenever I was not working, I was fencing.
What's a side note on that before you keep going? What's the personality type like for a fencer? Like, are these... I don't want to make any assumptions.
Yeah, it's not what you think. People think it's like nerds or like chess, but if you just Google or just go on YouTube and watch an Olympic bout, it is the most athletic sport. These are beasts. These people are like top athletes. They're in top physical shape.
Cool.
So it's not There are those kids. They don't do so well after a certain point. It kind of weeds out between like an athletic group versus like the chess playing group, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So this was the burnout stage. You were doing both. Did you decide to give one up, or what happened?
I quit my job completely out of nowhere with no plan, which was the first big pattern I broke in my life. I had mostly been a rule follower up until then. I quit it. My parents were not happy. People were not happy with me, but I was like, I can't do this. I will do anything to find a way to pay my bills other than this. I kept fencing, and I went on Upwork and I started doing copywriting. I ghost wrote a book for like a bodybuilder, Sam Shimmy, actually. He's great.
Whole book?
Yeah, I ghost wrote his book.
How long was the book?
Not long, like 100 pages maybe. I don't remember.
Damn.
Yeah.
I admittedly did stumble the fact that you did do copywriting, which I want to tap into. But before we do, keep going.
Yeah. So I just tried to monetize the skills I already had, which was copywriting and like a little bit of advertising work. And I taught fencing for some cash. And in the meantime, I was creating this new vision for what is today is Petite Power.
You were in New York at this point?
Yeah.
You were living in New York? Mm-hmm. For anybody, like downtown New York?
I was in Williamsburg, Brooklyn at that point.
For anyone that's never been or knows nothing about New York, aka me, what is the worst and best part about New York?
Well, I'm in Austin now, so I'm not there anymore. So I feel like that says something. But the best part is the vibrancy of it. It has a heartbeat, a pulse. It's magical and alive in every way, shape, and form. And the bad part is that exact thing. You never shut off. You never turn down. I never felt like you could connect with like my surroundings. Like I'm more of a nature person. So you can't really get quiet. I mean, I guess you can, but I couldn't do it there.
That would be hard for me.
Yeah.
I definitely need a turn off time. Probably most of my days. I was telling you in the sauna the other day.
Yeah.
I don't hang out with people ever because I like my off time.
Totally.
All the time. It's funny because it's true. So copywriting. Why copywriting? First of all, how did you even get into that? And then the second part to that question is well, before we do, just start there.
Yeah. So my dream as a kid was to be a writer, and that is still pretty much what I love to do most when I'm not working. And
fiction or non? You want to write your own Peter Pan book?
Yeah, that'd be fun. Sure.
Right.
I write fiction. Yeah.
Okay.
And like poetry and stuff like that.
Cool.
And so in college, I love science. That's how I ended up copywriting in pharmaceuticals, because I was just writing ad copy for drugs, which was kind of cool. I got to like work with doctors and work with like pharma, but also evil. So
I was just gonna say the
Yeah.
fulfillment on that has got to be real low.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Let's push some drugs into people that probably don't need them. Got it.
Yeah, they brainwash you a little better than that, but
Oh, I'm sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to be a writer. I thought, oh, okay, I can get paid to write if I sell things using my writing, which is not the same. But I still enjoy it, whether it's like no matter really what it's for.
Have you always been wanting to be a writer then? Was that like the initial dream before getting into fencing?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've always written.
Do you still write now today?
Yeah.
Have you written a book yet?
Well, no.
Got it. Okay.
Working on it. I don't like to say I'm going to do things. Like I like to do them and then I'll talk about them. But
Why?
I'm just a doer. I don't know. I don't want to be like, oh, I'm working on this thing or I'm doing this thing. Like if I'm doing it, you'll know. You know, it's because for me, I'm not the writing, especially. Like I will I'm talking about it now, but I would do it under a ghost writing name. I wouldn't do it under my name. I don't think.
Like a pen name of some form?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Cool. Good for you. That seems like a little hidden nugget that I didn't expect to get into.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, copywriting. Mm-hmm. Stopped doing the fencing thing, doing a little bit of coaching. Mm-hmm. And then Petite Power started somewhere in there?
Yeah. So when I was corporate, I did start a fitness account on Instagram. I started getting really into lifting weights while I was training for fencing. And I went through like a physical transformation at the time that was very, it totally changed the way I saw exercise and fitness, and everything I thought I knew about nutrition and everything was different than what I thought it was. I started lifting weights when I was working corporate, and I lost weight, even though I was in good shape for fencing, but I still was struggling with like just not feeling like I was an athlete. It was not a time where I felt like I was in tip top shape. I was carrying a lot of like high cortisol and probably not good habits. My eating wasn't good. So I started lifting weights. I stopped doing cardio, and I learned a lot about nutrition. And then I started talking to the doctors that I worked with about metabolism and height. And I started learning a lot about how metabolism works through them and how my height kind of impacted why doing cardio for years wasn't really working for me, and just learning all about the science of it. And
Wait, can you give us the short version? Why would height affect cardio?
essentially it burns more calories, right, than resistance training. So that's true for anyone. But I think that what's really different about petite women is if you're trying to lose a pound in a week, that's 3,500 calories that you need to cut in a week for anyone. Doesn't matter what you are, who you are. And for most people, they're going to approach that by doing a 500 calorie deficit per day. If a petite woman does that, she's eating already like maybe 1,000 calories a day. So now she's eating 500 calories a day.
Damn.
That's not sustainable. That's not going to work. That's a trap I was stuck in, where I would starve myself because I was trying to do this deficit and then binge eat later. And so once I got the education that, hey, for your body type, for your height, it's going to take longer. It's not going to happen in a week like other people, like your tall girlfriends who just like go run a few miles and like are losing weight. Like it's not going to work for me like that. If I create that steep of a deficit, it doesn't work because we're already so low in calories. So it's a perspective switch. It's really obvious stuff, but nobody is talking about that for short women. We're just trying to force these like tall people approaches, and it always leads in failure, basically.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I mean, we briefly touched on that topic as well in the sauna. About some of those differences. That's interesting. I don't know why this is really weird thought, so anybody can mute this for a second if they want to. But I was just thinking, would you burn more or less calories having long or short legs? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can answer that.
Oh, go.
Yeah. So, Justin, this is what I know. This is the stuff I know. We burn way less calories because assuming if your legs are shorter, unless you have like crazy amount of lean muscle mass, the smaller you are, the less lean body mass you have. So you're going to burn fewer calories at rest. And then we also have smaller organs. So overall metabolic functioning is lower or more efficient.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so this is what I love about this though, is like you assume, this is what humans do. We assume things are simple and make sense once they're explained to us. But until they're explained to us, like you just did in this moment, you would never fucking know. Right?
Yeah.
We do this all the time. It's like this table. We're like, yeah, it's just like a marble table with some poles that hold it up. No. Like there's so much more to this than we ever realize until you actually get into it. So it's interesting that you've obviously found this area that most people are like, yeah, you're just shorter than most people. It's kind of probably the same, right? No, it's not. It's not the same at all.
Yeah. I mean, I spent like 10 years on the hamster wheels, like forcing things that weren't working, and still didn't figure it out until like 2018.
Damn, that's cool. And so something I wanted to make sure to touch on with you was some of the copywriting and like basically the overlap between the copywriting and a lot of the content creation that you do now, because you have a great YouTube channel as well if anybody wants to check it out. But I'd be curious as to, with your background in copywriting, have you found overlaps or carryover in those two things? Like, do those play in the same worlds, or how do you see those coming together?
Yeah. Copywriting, like the way I was professionally trained, didn't translate perfectly over. I had to find my own voice, which is different. When you're writing copy, you're writing as a brand. So, and I started the company originally as a personal brand. It's shifted a little bit now, but I had to speak from my own place and my own position. And so my copywriting became more like I was my target audience, or I was the client avatar. So it was kind of talking to myself and sharing my own journey. But a lot of principles that I already knew about, why copy works. It's emotional. You're eliciting an emotional response. You're saying, hey, you, and the you is catching someone's attention. A lot of those principles I could borrow and still use to like relate to my audience on a deeper level.
Do you, I love copywriting. I love doing a lot of writing myself as well. I'm curious if you have any tips or advice for other people in terms of trying to learn how to find their voice. for their own copywriting? Because I know, obviously, as somebody who's done this podcast episode, I have my own thoughts and ideas behind how one might do it, but I'd be curious as to what you might tell somebody.
I think it gets your messages. In the beginning, I just brain dumped all the things that I thought would be like the core messages I wanted to get across. And then I would refine it to like 3 things. Like, what are like the 3 things I'm going to smash everyone's, like, I'm going to just say this for years over and over and over again in as many different ways as possible. Just the same concept, like a singular, simple thing. For me, it's like, you know, fitness and nutrition is different for short women. Like, weight loss is different for short women. That's all I'm saying. And here's what you can do differently to get better results. That's it. And so what are the stories I can tell around that? What are the like emotional stories? What are the scientific stories, the research? What's the facts? What's other, anecdotally, what are other people's experiences? So it's like collecting all the evidence for a singular idea and just repeating it over and over and over again. But I would start with like a brain dump of like, what are you trying to say?
Yeah, I like that a lot. I was just talking to Gunther about that on this previous episode about how we, again, have these assumptions that when we say something, like people are listening. Mm-hmm. And it's like, nope. Like no one's paying attention. Like you got to say it again. And then in a new way and in a different format on a different medium and a new, like you just, all the best creators in any ways that I know for the most part say the same things.
There's so much repetition.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
Realizing that like most people aren't paying attention most of the time. And even if they were, they weren't actually paying attention.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I feel like that's sort of like, that's even like kind of marketing in a nutshell is like, just say the same thing over and over again in unique ways. That's entertaining.
Yeah. Or just say the exact same thing again.
Copy, paste.
Yeah.
Repeat.
Exposure.
A month later.
Yeah.
So there was a moment in this journey of moving from burnt out, working, getting into what you do now in terms of being this petite athlete, as I'm going to keep calling you. How were you able to make that transition, and what were maybe some of the lessons learned in that transition of going from working in the corporate, wanting to ride the corporate ladder, to now learning how to run your own business and become an entrepreneur?
Some of the lessons of that transition.
Yeah.
For me, the lesson was you can break the rules and getting comfortable with breaking the rules. Just like, okay, you have this vision. What is it going to take to get there? What do you need to do? And I didn't go the investment route. I bootstrapped it. And so I started with a Kickstarter to kind of just get some proof of concept. We surpassed our funding goal, which wasn't high. It was like $7,500. And I was like, can I raise that? And it was just an ebook sale. So I sold a $65 ebook and we raised like 8,000 or 9,000. I can't remember. And that was enough proof that I was like, okay, there's an audience somewhere there. I didn't have one yet.
I was going to say, was it literally just a Kickstarter, or like how did traffic even come to that? Were you talking about it at all?
Oh yeah. I had started an Instagram. I had like 1,000 followers. It was like 2017 or 2018. I didn't have a YouTube yet or anything. And I was just talking about it, but I was talking to like women in the DMs. Like I had a very small audience, like not a lot of women, not a lot of reach, but the women that I was talking to, I was talking to them one-on-one all the time. And some of them I started coaching after I got my certifications, and giving them resources and just seeing how their results were evolving. And those people, it was very grassrootsy. Like they told every short girlfriend they had, they were like, I've never heard of this before. It's working for me. I'm getting these crazy results without like running my ass off every day and starving. So I'd say it was just like, it was really like built out of this curiosity of like, is there something here? And then leaning into that grassroots vibe and that like community feeling originally.
Do you remember your first coaching client?
Well, yes, I started a personal training business first, coaching young fencing athletes who were competitive. And then I sold that business. So my first, training clients were really high performing athletes. And then I switched to Gen Pop, just petite women after that. So my first client was a fencer.
Why did you decide to make that switch?
Because I wanted to go all in. I'm all in. Like I was like, once I got all my certifications and I had this idea and I saw it working for people, I was like, I'm just going to focus on petite women. Like I don't want to be in fencing. I'm not going to be the best trainer for fencing athletes. There's already 1 million, and those were my mentors. Or not 1 million, there's a select few that are really good for it. But I could be the best at this because this is my body. I know how it works. And I can relate to this audience really well. And the only other person at the time who had spoken to this group of people was New York Times bestselling author Jim Karras, who's now one of my advisors. And he wrote this book called The Petite Advantage Diet, and it went viral. He was on Oprah, Dr. Oz. The audience went crazy for the material, but they were also like, you're like a 6'4" dude. Like, why are we taking advice from you? So I felt like there was opportunity there for me to be like, kind of it be really authentic and genuine.
Yeah, you could be the face of the movement.
Yeah.
When you decided to go all in, were you afraid of failing?
Oh yeah, it was so cringe, like every day. Oh, that's like the worst part when I think back on those days, because I had to start this Instagram like as I was still fencing, and all my competitors would see it, and it was so like, it was like sharing vulnerable stuff, and you can't be vulnerable around your competitors. Like we're studying each other. Like we might have to fight like on the podium for a podium place. Like you don't want them to know the stuff that you're really feeling, but to connect with my audience, I really needed to share things I was struggling with, like insecurities with my weight and stuff that I was embarrassed about. So it was so cringe. I'd post stuff, and then like at practice, people would talk about it, or they said nice things to my face, but I don't know what they said, but like who knows? Like locker room talk is kind of savage. So it was a really hard time until it started getting traction. And then, of course things kind of changed after that.
Locker room talk is savage.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to think. I literally can't even begin to guess what is said in the fencing locker room. I don't even know.
That's niche. That's a niche topic right there.
That is some viral content. Yeah. If you can pull some of that out of there, that sounds phenomenal. Interesting. How did you, you're obviously a doer, and I respect that a lot. How did you work through some of that? Because I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of, even I can. I think there's often times where I feel like there's certain things that I know if I really wanted to succeed, that I should just commit, is the word I like to use. But it's scary.
Yeah, it's so scary.
And from both ends, fear of failure and fear of success. Like they're both terrifying. Like how does one overcome such a thing?
True. I think fear of success is actually way harder to overcome than fear of failure. But I just think this is where that weird skill I have or whatever, I can just block out all the stuff that's right here, and I just see like where I want to be. Like I just see where I want it to be, who's with me there, all of the women's lives that have been impacted positively by this information. And I just feel it in my body. And if I focus on that, I'm like, I don't really care this dumb post that I made today. It's so insignificant. Like
To the big picture.
Yeah, big picture.
Totally.
I'm not detail oriented at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Explains the Peter Pan analogy. Some of this is coming together. You're a big dreamer. You probably want to fly someday. If I had to, I don't know.
Why not?
With a sword, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Interesting. Is your family like that? Were you raised like that? Do you have other big dreamers in your family and or entrepreneurs in your family?
So I've always seen my dad as entrepreneurial, although he's an entrepreneur now, but he had some things he started, and he also worked corporate for most of my childhood. I never had that dream that like a lot of entrepreneurs have entrepreneurial parents. I didn't have that. I never thought I'd start a business. Like not in a million years did I think I would be doing what I am today. Mm-hmm. I didn't dream about that. I never dreamt about owning a business or like being a CEO or any of that. Like it just was not something I thought about. But my parents are both big dreamers. They're really driven, really ambitious, and my family's very hardworking. My sister as well, and they're all very creative. So I think, if anything, what they instilled in me is like, you can outwork anyone. Like it doesn't. Yeah, talent is important, but like you are gonna outwork everybody. And if you're just standing there long enough, like people just fall off. Like if you just stand long enough, it doesn't even matter if your quality isn't that good. You're probably going to be still around, and other people will give up. And that's definitely a Whitney trait, I think, the stubbornness.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, again, going back to like using what might call a weakness as a strength.
Yeah.
Doggedness is the word I like to use. A mantra I repeat to myself often is, I can't lose if I don't quit. That has gotten me through a lot. Totally.
That's what I used to think too. Like the only time you fail is if you stop trying. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Totally agree. So what's next for you? You running a business, you have a whole team now, creating a lot of content. Where do you see things going with that big vision of yours?
Yeah, I see Petite Power being the go-to brand for women 5'4" and shorter for all sorts of things, for petite fashion and fitness wear, for a source of information. Right now, we have our online health membership, which is growing. We had our first 500 founding members in the last 3 months, and it's growing rapidly.
Damn.
So continuing with the coaching services. I also see us doing supplements and protein powders for petites. We already have some of our dietitians working on formulations, and I think there's just a really cool way to serve petite women and just have our community, our corner of the internet. And I just want to create stuff that my community wants. Like, what do they want? What is cool? What are they going to enjoy and like identifying with? And I think we can completely own that category over the
I think this is a basic question, but an important question for people to hear. How do you figure that stuff out?
like what to build.
Yeah.
I listen to my customers.
How do you do that?
Well, we do have a lot of opportunities for feedback, like customer feedback. My ops people do most of the exit interviews or types of, feedback, but I'll also, I try to stay in contact with my community. I'm not fully removed. I lead live events inside our membership, and I have a lot of community members who are kind of now insiders. Like, I've created like a insider circle of just people who've been there since like 2017 that I consult with. I'll send them our products first before we even talk about them online and just be like, do you like this? Like, I definitely am shopping stuff out before I invest resources and time into things.
How do you know what's a good idea and a bad idea from your customers? Because I think about that as well. Is sometimes people project things that are like not such great ideas at the end of the day. So it's good to listen, but at what point are you like, nah, that's not for us?
To be honest, I don't think you do know. I think it's an iterative process and you fail a lot. Everything we built has been shitty at first and then gotten amazing like through time, and just because we're bootstrapping also, it's a slow process that has advantages. You can be intentional and grow slower, which means you're going to have more loyal followers and more of a real community when you're growing slower. You're not just throwing money at stuff. Like, you're really intentional with every dollar. And yeah, we failed a ton. Like, a lot of the first versions of things we did, like, we had our OG fans be like, I love this in theory, but like, it sucks. Can we make it better? Like, and I'm like, yeah. So then that's when that conversation starts. So then we start like adding, like, we were developing the software last year for our club, and it's ours, it's proprietary. And before that, we white labeled, we tried other services, and they just didn't have that like at home feeling that we needed for our community. So that was like a 3-year process getting to where we are now.
Love that word, 3-year. I love to unveil the veil of like how long certain things take to actually get good at it, which makes me want to tap on the fact of something I know you're really good at is your ability to focus. And a quote I really like by Steve Jobs is that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And I think that you've done a really good job of knowing how to dial in on the vital pieces of your business as opposed to trying to do all the things. How do you figure that out? How do you dial it in? How do you focus? How do you stay committed to something versus trying to do all the things, one could say?
I probably don't do that entirely, but I mean, I think I leaned into one of my advisors always said, as a solo founder, a solo entrepreneur, your like time horizon is almost entirely dependent on your excitement and your energy levels to create that thing. And you're running against the clock, against yourself. Like, if you don't like doing this thing anymore. So if you as an entrepreneur want to build something and you're not fully invested in it, it's going to take 5 years maybe until it's successful, 3 to 5 minimum. So if you're not like really in on that, you are going to burn out on it. So I think just like, I'm very selective about like, okay, this is like a direction we could go. Am I all in on it? Because I have a team now, thank God, but I still need to be the torchbearer, and I need to energize them, and we all need to be aligned. And if I'm not really realistically going to love this 5 years from now, like, let's not pursue it. Let's find another avenue that we can all get excited about.
I like it. You expand out the time horizon. Basically, if I'm excited about it now, cool. But if I'm not going to be excited about it in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's probably not a good idea.
Yeah, that's definitely how I think about it.
Interesting. Very good. I have before I do, sorry. I wanted to tap on your unique skill set in terms of social media and obviously community building. And if you were to give the college 101 version of your best pieces of advice for anybody who's wanted to build a social media following or an online community or gathering attention, what's maybe the advice that you'd give them, or what would you educate them on?
I would say it depends on the goal always. If you want to create a business, that is very different than being an artist. So if you're just if you love creating content and you get really emotionally attached to what that looks like when it's published, that's not a business. A business, you have to completely detach from what people think of your product, like in terms of the front of the funnel, like the creative stuff. So I think the advice from that is like, take imperfect action. Nothing's ever going to feel good enough. You just need to post it with that one message that you're trying to get across. And you're going to have to get comfortable, be uncomfortable for a long time, like creating kind of crap for a while. As long as if it's genuine, the message is good, the intention is good, like the production quality is not going to be good at first. So just getting like through that uncomfortable phase is like what I would tell a beginner.
I like the hard truth between knowing your intentions too, between are you doing this because you want it to be a business, or are you doing this because you want to be an artist? I think we try to mend the two, which I'm not saying you can't, obviously. I think anything's possible, but it definitely makes it a lot harder.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's
Yeah.
a really good point. Yeah, because like just to create creatively for the sake of creation lacks intention as to what you're trying to lead somebody towards, essentially, versus a business post might be more intentional around like, I'm trying to maybe help you become problem aware of a problem you didn't know existed, which is a completely different intention than just like, I'm trying to be creative.
Yeah, like this is not my art.
Right.
You know, I have writing for that. This
Right.
is not self-expression. This is like I have a mission, and it's monetized too. So it's like it's passion. But if you're trying to build anything, you are going to need money to sustain that, and you have to figure out how you're going to help people and pay your whole team and do all that. So it can't be emotional for me. It can't be like my art.
I like that. That's good advice. I have a round of rapid fire questions.
Cool,
So whatever
let's
the
do it.
first thing is that comes to mind.
All right.
What's your best business advice?
I think the best advice, and this was something given to me, so it's not original, but to get buy-in on an idea before you go and create this whole thing. I see people like go and create an entire course with like all these ebooks. They spend like a year on it, and then they go to sell it, and they don't even know if people want it. This is a form of procrastination. I think like what's better is to just be like, hey, I'm looking for 3 to 5 people who would want this. Is there interest? And you get someone, pre-sell them, say it's not going to be ready for 3 months, but at least you pre-sold it. At least you know it's going to be worth your time to build. I think that would be it.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
This is a big realization, I think, for a lot of business owners, is that the way that the game is played is different than it used to be. It used to be you build a product or service or a course or whatever, and then you push a bunch of marketing behind it, trying to get people to buy it. I think it's way smarter now because we have the opportunity to do the reverse, where you have the opportunity now to talk about it via social or your email or your friends or whatever, text messages, and then go, oh, they want this thing, and then create it. It's a completely reverse of how most businesses used to work.
Yeah, totally.
Love that. What's your best marketing advice?
I think it has to be about community. Like today, this is a very today piece of advice. If you have community, that is the best form of marketing. It's better than any paid ad. It's better than a viral Instagram reel. It's a real thing. And when people see other people are into something, like there's just nothing better that builds trust better, that's more real. So like finding like-minded people and gathering them online is, I think, the best marketing a business could have.
Great advice. What's your favorite part about entrepreneurship?
The freedom.
When are you the most productive?
The mornings.
Who is your inspiration?
I feel like my inspiration comes from everything. And this is like literally, I feel I'm a very high like energy person, and I feel like overstimulated all the time, but even just like on a walk. And I think my inspiration could come from literally anything, anytime. And I do funnel a lot of that more into like the creative sides of things, but I also find that inspiration from other industries is always the most interesting, because you can see like, how can I apply like something from fashion into fitness? So there's not a lot of obvious crossover. So I don't know. I think you can take inspiration like out on a walk from a tree. Like it doesn't have to be some like grandiose, like I don't have a lot of role models that are like CEOs, or like I draw a blank thinking of that. But if I think about just like things I see day to day, or just going through a routine, I find more inspiration in that stuff.
That's a great answer. I've not heard that one before. That's really good. Tell me one secret or something most people don't know about you.
Well, it's probably the writing, because I don't ever talk about that, but we kind of already fleshed that one out.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's a completely new one to me. What would you change about yourself?
I think I would, being a athlete in an individual sport, I didn't have the team, like I didn't have all those hours. I have like tens of thousands of hours logged on being a lone soldier, and starting a business, I didn't ask for help at all. And I know now, like, you need to ask for help. Like, you can find so many ways to provide value to people. Like, it doesn't have to be a one-way exchange. It needs to be an exchange, but I think, and I'm still working on this. Like, that's why I think it still needs to change. My team will call me out and being like, you said you're going to call this mentor and like ask them for this. And I'm like, I'll keep putting it off. I'm like, I won't ask them yet. I might not need them yet. Like, I don't want to annoy them or bother them, but people love helping. I know I love helping. And I think you have to ask for help to do anything. So I'm working on that.
Feels like a very American thing too. We're such like a independent driven culture.
Yeah.
That asking for help for anything feels like a sign of weakness.
True.
Which
Yeah.
is actually, it's kind of the opposite in so many ways. What's your favorite app or resource right now?
Probably Opal.
What is that?
Oh, it's a productivity app. It just like blocks everything on your phone so that you can't open it.
Everything.
Like, well, whatever you want it to, but I just turn it on. Like,
What's your nemesis? What app?
probably iMessage, which is ironic because I don't reply to anything, so I don't even know what I'm doing on there, honestly.
She's like, she never responds.
Yeah.
That can't possibly be her. When were you the happiest?
When was I? Or
Yeah.
it's right now.
Oh, sweet. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Present day.
In my presence? What? Favorite part about Austin, and you can't say the people.
It's what brought me here was the hybrid between city and nature, which I'd never had in New York. Like being able to drive out to the country or get a hike in, and then also be in a relatively a mid-sized city. I think that's really unique, and it's a very accessible city. I've been to almost every state, and I haven't found a city like Austin that feels homey, has nature, is accessible. The airport's like 5 minutes away, but still has a big enough feeling that you can have lots of exciting adventures in it.
That's cool. I think the thing that I've always liked was it's like, quote unquote, big city, but small town vibes.
Definitely.
I feel like I run into everybody around town.
Yeah, you totally do. Like on the trail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice. Before we get to the next part here, real quick, what's your favorite fiction book and favorite nonfiction book since you're a writer?
Oh.
You must read a lot, right?
I do. But that's recent, because the first like 4 years of starting my business, all I did was work nonstop. And now I have boundaries now and things like that. So I read. But I'd probably say Everything is Illuminated by, I'm going to mess it up. His last name's Foer. It's either Joshua or Jonathan. Joshua Foer.
That's fiction?
Yeah, it's fiction.
Okay.
Love that book. And nonfiction, that's hard. Maybe The Romance of Reality, which is a book about how it's written by like an astrophysicist, and it's his like dissertation on how like the cosmos is alive. It's like a love story about science, but it's nonfiction.
Sounds profound.
It's pretty deep. Yeah, it's good.
Damn. I have one last question. Before I ask that question, I want to acknowledge you.
Oh.
For following your passions, for really committing to something when you decide to go all in on it, for helping a lot of other petite women, for our sauna session that we had past week, and for joining me here today on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
My
for
pleasure.
Sure. Before I ask my last question, what's your plug? Where can people find you?
Oh yeah, April V. Whitney on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and petitepower.com.
Perfect. Last question. If you were to start your business over from ground zero, and you were to have a conversation with your younger self or somebody else in that situation of their early entrepreneurship journey and wanting to start a business and having the grand vision, what's maybe the best piece of advice you would give to them or your younger self in that circumstance?
Probably to write down what the big vision is that's going to keep you going.
You have pretty good clarity on that for yourself?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Love it. Thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey friend, thanks for listening to the show, and if you have any feedback for me about the show or any other guests that you'd want to see in the show, definitely shoot me a message. I love engaging with my audience and figuring out how I can provide the best value possible to the people listening to this show. Before you go, I only have one ask of you, and that would be to check out my 3 Tips Tuesday newsletter. It's 3 marketing tips every Tuesday specifically for the health and fitness entrepreneur to help them attract new leads. If you press the link in the description, it'll take you directly to the archive of all my previous newsletters, and you can decide for yourself if it's something for you. If you end up finding it helpful, you can just sign up for the newsletter and you'll get it in your inbox every Tuesday. Thanks again, and keep hustling, my friends.